Alright, here we are. This is my explanation of Passport and the walkthrough of the code behind it. Let's look at the internet real quick, and I've got my server loaded, my local host running. This is the first screen that comes up, an HTML page asking you to sign up. I've already signed up, so let's go to the login click here. My information is already loaded in here. I click on the login button, and it brings me to a nice members page greeting me with my email name. You can click log out and it goes back to the main form there. So that's what the website looks like. Let's look at the code by clicking on Atom here. So we look at the package JSON. The main tells us where to look next, which is server.js, and you see a bunch of dependencies listed here, and we'll get into those in a sec once we look at server.js. So we'll look at server.js, and a bunch of dependencies here. Express, which we know what that is. Body parser, we know what that is. Something called session, express session, and something called passport. So we'll go to the webs to look at that real quick. And what that tells us is express session, node module available through the npm. Basically adds a couple extra library functions for Express that we'll use later. Passport package is a package that allows you to do authentication requests on your Node application. Alright, so back to the code. We've got, let's see here, a variable db, and it's requiring the models. So we'll have to check that out. It also requires, let's see here, a couple routes, so we'll check those out as well. And it makes a call to that DB here with a synchronization function, and we'll look at that in a sec as well. So let's jump over to the models folder to see what the heck that is. Here's the models folder, and we'll open up, let's open up user first. User is actually making a call to another Node package called bcrypt. When we look at bcrypt on the internet, it says it is a native JavaScript implementation of bcrypt. Bcrypt is encryption software, and it was created a while ago. It's kind of a standard. Looking at wiki here, it says it's a hashing function designed in the late 90s based on the Blowfish cipher. So it's encryption software. We go back to bcrypt. This is just the Node JavaScript implementation of that encryption software. So back into the code. Let's see here. Looks like we're creating an object called user, and it has two fields in it, email and password, and we're going to use a couple functions here that haven't explained themselves yet. It's in that bcrypt package, so we'll visit that in a sec. What else do we want to look at? We probably want to go to the other model, which is the index file. That was the first model, user.js. This index file, first line that we don't normally see is use strict. What is use strict? We go back to the internet. Use strict. Oh, actually, I closed that window, but I can tell you what it is. Use strict basically says you can't have any sloppy code work for this application where you use this line. So no undefined variables, you gotta close out lines, all that good stuff. I'm not sure why the person who created Password, this application used that specifically, but I'm sure as we go through it, we'll have that realization. let's see here. In the index.js, we'll notice that most of its boilerplate sequelize. It has a variable named base name here, and that uses a path method used to extract only file names from a URL. And I might have that internet web page also pulled up. Yeah, here we go. So that's W3 Schools talks about that one. And like I said, it extracts the file name from a file path. So great, I'm sure that's needed. What else? The if-else statement here is basically assigning the variable sequelize to the environment that the application is currently running in. It's either this or this. If we go to config.json, which is what it's referring to because this tells us that. Let's go there real quick. Config.json basically just gives us all our different environments. Development, test, or production are the names of those objects within this object. So for this particular one, we're doing development. So let's go back to, where were we? We were in index. Yeah, here we were. All right, so that's what the if-else statement does. And then we have the fs package calling a couple functions here. We required it up here, and this looks like it's divvying out file names based on these specific requirements. So let's see. Now we kind of want to see where the models that we just looked at, the index and user models, where they're being used at. So we'll go to the HTML pages, which are, there was a statement in there earlier about using the public folder, static files within it. So when we go to that, we have 3 pages here: login, members, and sign up, and a whole bunch of HTML code in here. Referencing a script. Looks like a login.js for this particular one for the login page. I'm going to guess members has a members.js. Oh, look at that, it does. Sign up has signup.js. All right, so that's going to have all your logic for what gets displayed on this page for the dynamic content. So what do we want to look at next? Let's see. Oh, we looked at the config file. Let's look at the routing files. So we had some routing that was being called backendserver.js. We required it on line 17 and 18. So let's look at HTML routes.js. So in here we require path, and we also, let's see here, we require path, which is, we've already done that for a while now, but we have a new thing we're requiring, is authenticated, and we point back to somewhere in the config middleware folder called is authenticated. So let's look at that real quick. Is authenticated, looks like it's just a function that gets exported in a module, and basically is saying that if this field is filled in, we're going to do the next function, and looks like we're going to return a redirect back to the root directory. So root directory is going to be something that's called in our HTML routes. This whole route page, HTML routes, has 3 GET requests, one for the root directory, one for the login page, and one for the members page, and they load all those HTML files that we already looked at. The other routing file that was required is API routes. And it looks like API routes is requiring all our models, saving it as a database or DB variable, and then also the passport information is being saved into a passport object as variable passport. What else are we doing here? We've got a post, and so at this location, when it's listening for this, it's going to conduct a post using the passport.authenticate package method, and it feeds in this string when it does that. You've got another post here for the sign up, and I would guess this is the difference between what I demonstrated at the very beginning of the website, asking for sign up information, or if you've already signed up, you do login information. It's getting email and password from the rec body if you're signing up. So you would start new information there if you're signing up. And once it gets that, it does a redirect to the login page. Then the logout button looks like it does a GET request when listening for this logout, and it runs a logout function as well as a redirect function back to the root directory. This last GET request looks like for user data, and if there is no user, then it's going to load some handlebars, it looks like. So we got nice little mustaches in here. Else, if there is user information, it's going to provide the email and the ID based on these two sections of the database. Great. Last but not least, we'll take a look at this passport file that is in the config folder. So passport requires the passport package and requires something called local strategy, passport local. So let's look at the internet to see what that is. That is another package set that we bring into Node. So passport local, basically passport is the main package for Express. Passport local is one of several strategies, is what it refers to. There are several strategies you can use with the passport system. And it's got local, OpenID, you can use Facebook to log in, Google to log in, Twitter to log in. We're going to use local. And what local is this package right here. A module lets you authenticate using username and password in your Node application. Great. All right, so back to the code. That's what we're importing, is that package. We're importing the models here and saving them as DB. And then we're using functions out of the passport package. .use does the local strategy variant, which we've saved here that we just mentioned. We'll save the username field as the email that's entered, and it looks like this will do our generic find one method that looks in the object database where a database call where email is equal to that email. Then if there's no user, we'll return done and set this message in incorrect email. If there is, if there isn't a user, or if there is a user but not a valid password, it looks like we'll say incorrect password. Otherwise, we'll return done. And that database user. Another passport method here is serialize user, and it looks like it does a callback returning that user information once the callback is complete. This one does a deserialization, which returns the object. I'm not sure what that is referring to yet, but I'm sure we'll find out. I told myself I wasn't going to stay up past midnight looking at this, so the last most important part to mention in this video is this video.